Going into Resident Evil Requiem, I had many concerns. Split the survival horror and action-heavy gameplay and place them in one game? A game that is divided that way surely will not stand, will it not? Where both sides don't receive the level of polish and care required? Why not continue the route they took with Village and take another attempt at merging the two approaches? I had concerns that the game would feel like a disjointed mess. Like a game frankensteined together from scrapped ideas. And after completing Requiem, yes, I did find it to be a disjointed mess. And yet, there is still plenty of fun within. They did manage to pull off the split better than expected. There are some of the highest highs of the RE Engine era of Resident Evil here. After a slog of a prologue, once you get settled into the care center, the game takes off. Well, after an uninspired stalker section that Capcom needs to drop moving forward. The survival horror stretch with Grace in the care center is fantastic. The greater emphasis on zombie AI and how they interact with one another added a fresh, welcome layer. There are some great tweaks to the layers of decision making and resource management. Of course, the quality does drop off as the game progresses, nothing new for the franchise, but did make me wonder what the game would look like had they went with a sole survival horror focus approach. As great as this stretch is, it felt like they only went knee-deep in the water with what they could do with these different enemy types. And on the action side of gameplay, there was an early encounter that did win me over. You know, maybe they can pull this gameplay split off. Which they did to an extent, but not to the level I was hoping for after an early game encounter as Leon. His stretches are a bit paint by numbers. There are a few tweaks from the remake of 4, but nothing that's a major leap forward. The combat still lacks much of the punch and rewarding nature found in the 4-6 era back in the day. So while Requiem could have some of the highest highs of the RE Engine era, it has some of the lowest lows, especially in its back half. The game's pacing loses its momentum and can come to a grinding halt. There are too many walking simulator stretches that'll put a damper on the game's replayability. There's a severe lack of puzzles. And the plot of Requiem? Oh boy. Now the plot of Resident Evil has always been a bit of a mess. But Requiem takes it to a whole new level. Plot contrivances run amok. The character split between Grace and Leon leads to hampering some of Grace's growth as a character. There's unclear character motivations. But worst of all is how much Requiem decides to muck around with the past established lore. One that makes an already convoluted lore sink even further. The back half that ramps up on nostalgia rings hollow and uninspired, resulting in the game limping over the finish line. Which is nothing new for the series, but not quite to this extent. The split of gameplay and lackluster story results in Requiem lacking a strong identity. However you felt about Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil Village, they had their own distinct, strong identities. That is lacking in Requiem. They focused on one gameplay choice instead of splitting or taking another crack at merging like they did with Village. I would have liked to see how that Requiem would have looked instead. Resident Evil games tend to have rocky development cycles. Iterations and scrapped ideas until they find something that works. But Requiem feels different as a result of the gameplay split. Scrapped ideas thrown together. It's by far the messiest game in the franchise since Resident Evil 6. But it's messy in a different way. It is quite a fun mess. There are high levels of quality throughout, but the disjointed nature does hold the game back. And while as of writing there are no sales numbers released, Steam numbers paint a picture. Almost double the concurrent player count of the Resident Evil 4 remake, almost triple that of Village. Games that sold like hotcakes. Requiem looks to continue that trend, and looks to surpass them if sales hold long term, which has been the norm for the series during the RE Engine era. Which does have me worried that future sequels will take a similar approach as they do here, splitting off the gameplay to appease both survival horror and action-heavy players, resulting in diluted quality on both sides of the coin, where they should have focused on one or the other or made another attempt at merging the two. Combine that with the inevitable further remakes with some of the series' lesser titles, and I'm not sure what to make of the future of the franchise. Its commercial appeal is as strong as ever as it hits its 30-year mark. But on the quality side moving forward, I'm not so sure where things will go.
Excuse me.
Before beginning, I did receive an early review key, so thank you kindly, Capcom. As well, this will be a full spoiler review. I have kept footage up until now to the game's earlier stretches, so if you've not played or finished the game, here is your spoiler warning. Requiem has a slog of a prologue to get us started here. A walking simulator stretch as Grace making our way through the Wrenwood Hotel, including a flashback. Atmosphere is on point, but is one of those things that get in the way of replays. You can fly through them and skip cutscenes, but it is still an annoyance. Then you have a Leon section in the streets of Redwood. Short and sweet, and full of energy. Then it's back to Grace, now in the care center. Follows is a short, uninspired Stalker section. I'll get more into this later, but Capcom, you have played out these Stalker sections. Time to move on. You have an inspired short section as Leon here in the care center that had me looking forward to seeing the rest of his stretches. Although this ends up being a bit of a high point that most of the game doesn't reach afterward. More on that later. After a brief meeting with Grace, the two split, and Grace's survival horror stretch begins proper. Capcom, you need to do something about these drawn-out prologues. They are okay the first time around, but put a real damper in replayability. I know game completion rates tend to be quite low, but replayability has played such a large role in the love people have for the series. Yes, you can fly by these sections on replays, but they are still a drag that we can't skip. I have no idea why after completing the game one time, they do not allow you the option to skip the Redwood section for a new run. Is it as egregious as Resident Evil 7's intro? Not quite, but that's because we can at least skip cutscenes here, which you cannot do in 7 without a mod. Amnesia: The Bunker, one of the best survival horror titles in recent memory, had the right idea. Subsequent playthroughs allow you to skip the Prelude and drop right in. The original Clock Tower, which predates Resident Evil, allowed you to skip the Prelude as well. Capcom allowed the player to do so after additional playthroughs. It should not be up to the player to keep saves all over the place to do so. Anyway, let's move forward. Beyond the save room, we only have access to the West Wing at first. We'll need to find the key for the East Wing. At this point, we're vulnerable. We have Leon's revolver Requiem on hand, but only one bullet. Our pistol is gone. So to begin, it's time for stealth. Requiem gives you a few options for stealth. Crouch and evade enemy patterns. Use bottles to distract them. There's even an item offering an instant kill stealth option, but we'll get to that one in a bit. There's no stalker type enemy to deal with at the moment, only zombies, and more mini stalkers to deal with, ones that we could kill. But these zombies act in a different way than the ones we dealt with in the past. This is a mutated strain of the T-virus, one that retains pre-infection habits and characteristics. They have patterns and their own quirks. Like the giant zombie in the kitchen, this was a great little bit for building tension and threat levels. It's the hallway after and the following rooms where we get introduced to the different zombie types. First is the light switch zombie. There are a couple of these throughout the care center. These halls will have a few light switches we can use to lure them away to other spots to get by. In the bathroom here we have one of the blood scrubbers, Lady Macbeth zombies trying to clean up blood. In the dining room, we could find ourselves a pistol. Not the one Grace had before, but a pistol nonetheless. A means of defending ourselves beyond the revolver, which we will want to save for other times. We could find a knife, one that acts the same as Resident Evil 2 Remake. We can use it to bypass damage and stab enemies with it. To get it back, we will need to kill them. Of course, its brittle durability will have it breaking after excessive usage. And this is where Requiem begins to click, and I began to dig what it was laying down here. With regard to stealth, there is greater emphasis on it. Yes, you can make an attempt to juke out enemies, but it is trickier to do than in Resident Evil 2 Remake, even when switching to the third-person view. By default, Grace is set to the first-person perspective. With how Grace handles, how zombies lunge, and the narrow hallways, it is a less viable option than in the Resident Evil 2 Remake. So using stealth is the better choice if you want to avoid combat and preserve resources. On the firearm front, Grace has limited options. There's the revolver Leon gave her, the pistol we found in the dining room, and we can find Grace's pistol from earlier tucked away elsewhere. But beyond post-game unlocks, that's it. No shotgun for Grace, no rifles, that's only for Leon. Which I didn't mind. Grace does have different options that open up as we progress. Let Leon have the fun of mowing them down with higher powered firearms. And with how zombies handle, I can understand this trade-off. While it can happen, headshots from a pistol will be a rarity. It's going to take some time for zombies to go down. But we can upgrade our stats. We'll find antique coins tucked away that we can use in the parlor for upgrades. More inventory slots, increase our health, increase our firearm capabilities. It lifts the upgrade system right from Resident Evil 7. If we stun zombies, we can push them down, which can work quite well, especially with zombies grouped up. Position yourself right, and with a push, you can take another down with it, buying you time to run by. Not a guarantee with how they shuffle around, but possible, which adds a layer of unpredictability to what may happen. Speaking of unpredictability, zombies are harder to get a read on within Requiem, but they have their quirks that you could use to your advantage. Beyond the light switch flippers and the blood scrubbers, you have more basic zombies. Ones that shuffle around like your classic zombie. Others may carry a bottle or try to smash you with it, or in some cases throw it at you. There are a couple of singing zombies throughout the care center. There's something beautiful, haunting, and unsettling about this melody they sing. But if they spot you, they will let you know, along with other zombies around with that scream of theirs. Then you have another classic enemy trope, the blind one, but their hearing is more astute. There are a couple of zombies in the care center I will refer to as mini stalkers. Ones with more predictable patterns but take longer to go down, like the hulking zombie in the kitchen, or Big Boy Chunk here in the East Wing. I really love to troll this guy. He patrols a limited path due to his sheer size, preventing him from going through doors. One of Requiem's greatest strengths is how these zombies can interact with one another, as well how you could take advantage of that. The blood scrubbers in the kitchen from earlier, at one point I killed the light switch zombie near the kitchen. Coming back to the West Wing later, she left her initial spot to clean up the blood on the downed zombie in the kitchen. A nice surprise to return to later on. There's one room in the East Wing with a blood scrubber and a blind zombie. Blind Boy here loves to swing away at the source of a sound. So let's try throwing a bottle next to the blood scrubber. Funny to think that one swing was enough to kill her. Far more efficient than several gunshots. With Big Boy Chunk here in the East Wing, I tried getting a conga line of zombies after me. He plowed through them, doing heavy damage or killing others outright. There was another situation in the West Wing where I ended up getting the attention of a blind zombie. Not wanting to deal with him, I ran away, only to run smack dab into one of the singing zombies. She was more than happy to alert my presence to others. As a result, you get into some pretty wacky, chaotic situations here, ways that felt emergent and unexpected, which could happen with stalker enemies in the prior titles, but this felt different and a welcome twist to the formula. I was hoping that Requiem would build upon this foundation for Grace's sections, add more unique zombies to the mix as time progressed. Of course, with this thought, I had another in the back of my mind. Resident Evil tends to front-load its best stretches. Further stretches would either downplay these possibilities, which is what happened. This is what Grace more or less gets for unique zombies, which is too bad. With what they had here, they could have built the whole game around. Putting greater emphasis on enemies interacting with one another and using that against them, there was a lot of mileage they could have gotten out of it. You could structure rooms in a way like a puzzle. You could sneak by, try to mow them down, or also find ways to use them against one another, like how I used the blind zombie against the blood scrubber. I don't want to say immersive sim here, but allowing for more emergent gameplay in Resident Evil, if done right, I'm all for it. Bringing up Amnesia the Bunker again, that game took many cues from immersive sims. Of course, Requiem features a crafting system, like recent titles in the series and like every other big budget title these days, but it does make some welcome tweaks compared to how games like Village handled its crafting system. They take up inventory slots again, adding more decision making to managing resources. Crafting items like scraps do not stack, each takes up a slot. There's one key component of crafting for most items, that being the use of blood. Throughout the care center, we'll find buckets of blood laying around, some questionable practices going on here. We can use a blood collector to collect blood, which can only hold a certain amount, although we can upgrade it to hold more. Buckets of blood are not the only source. Killing zombies will have them dropping their blood. Not a ton, but a possible source. One overlooked element I enjoyed about Resident Evil 7 is how the game wouldn't pause when you brought up the menu. Of course, you could swap weapons or use healing items outside of it, but if you wanted to craft something, you had to be quick about here in the heat of the moment. Or wait for a better one. You didn't have the luxury of an enemy waiting around while you do your thing, which added to the tension and worked with its slower pace. Requiem does pause the game when you bring up the menu, which is fine, but for Grace's sections felt like a bit of a missed opportunity. For there's much that we could craft here that could help us in a pinch. But with a slower pace, they could have made the menu in real time for further tension. As well, it did feel like the crafting requirements for most items were quite generous. Some items felt like they should have required more for how handy they could be. This also leads me to the whole crafting conundrum that plagues so many modern games. I'm sure there are other games that do this, but more crafting systems should take cues from the Evil Within too. You could craft out in the field, but that requires more resources. You had to go back to a crafting bench if you want to use less. This is something I would love to see within Requiem. Adds more tension and decision making. Do I craft something now and eat up more resources, or wait until the item box to craft for less? One item that we could craft for what feels like a steal are these injectors. These are an instant kill. You could sneak up on an enemy or use it while they are in a stunned state. And oh boy, does this leave a mess. Looking at what happened here, would you ever guess that these count as a stealth kill? I would not have thought that in a million years. But that is what the item description says. I had to go test this out to be sure. Remember that room I mentioned earlier with the blind zombie and the blood scrubber? Blind boy here has an acute sense of hearing. He is right next to the blood scrubber. What better place to test this out? I have no idea why this counts as a stealth kill. It's the most bizarre yet hilarious stealth kill options I've come across in ages. Makes zero sense, but I can't help but love it for how over the top it is. This stealth kill has some pros and cons for it beyond being a quote-unquote quiet way of killing zombies. You can't pick up the blood, but they do prevent zombies from returning. For one of Requiem's most welcome surprises is we have the game's equivalent to the Crimson Head from the Resident Evil 1 remake. These are blister heads. Unless you use the stealth kill option or get lucky with a critical headshot and remove their head, zombies can't come back. And these buggers are vicious. That Magnum Leon gave Grace, now is a good time to use it. Blister heads eat up pistol bullets like candy, but the Magnum can put them down. You could find a few bullets for it if you're thorough in your exploration. You can craft them, but they do have a high crafting cost. As well, you can't go up to a downed zombie after and knife or shoot their head off, which does lead to the point of Requiem scaling back on dismemberment. Something they've done since the remake of 2, which is a bummer. Considering we're dealing with zombies here, it loses some of that luster. But I can see why they did it. It could be so easy to go around and shoot off zombie heads when they're dead and not have to worry about them returning. That said, in this care center stretch as Grace, there was only one blister head that popped up for me. Another did show up later, but that was during a scripted sequence. There is quite the juggling act you have to deal with here. Lots of decisions to make, limited inventory space, what should you take with you on your next venture out, how many slots to leave open, what crafting items should I take with me, what do you do about the zombies, do you kill them, do you leave them be, do you try to use them against one another, stealth kill them into a million pieces, what about the possibility of blister heads returning, those empty injectors that you found, want to craft a permanent health upgrade or upgrade Grace's firearm capabilities. Take all these factors along with the looping level design and you get into that classic Resident Evil flow, where you're thinking about where to go next, where you need to revisit, and what you need to do. When the game hits its stride here, it's excellent. While it still pales to the classic titles in the series, it still trumps many other survival horror titles on this front. This stretch here in the care center as Grace has some of the best survival horror gameplay of the RE Engine era, up there with the first stretch in the remake of 2 up until the sewer ventures. These little tweaks to the formula along with enemy behavior make for a compelling experience. They get great mileage out of these zombies here. There's not that many around, but they make the most of them. I do not foresee myself coming back and replaying other stretches of the game, but this care center stretch, I have gone back with and toyed around with, both on the standard difficulty and insanity difficulty. On the note of insanity difficulty, this is an unlock after completing the game. The name is quite fitting. It is vicious. Most lunges from zombies are a one-hit kill. You will want a knife on hand at all times to fend off their bites. So I saved up on antique coins to buy upgrades from the parlor. One of them is a permanent health increase bonus, which we could also craft, only for me to meet utter despair and realize insanity changed the upgrades we could get from the antique coins. No longer was there a health upgrade in the parlor. This mode shuffles around item placement. That gun in the dining room? Now a different spot. Antique coins shift around. Some enemies will drop them. Looping around the west wing the first time was a brutal experience. Getting to the east wing, getting the blood collector, and being able to craft an ink ribbon was exhilarating. This mode does not mess around. Use those challenge points you gain from your first run. You can get Grace an additional gun, charms for bonuses, a knife with infinite durability. Even then, zombies soak up bullets like no tomorrow, and you'll be lacking in them. Best of luck. So as great as this care center can be when Requiem hits its stride, there are key elements lacking, that being puzzles, both on the quantity and quality front. There's next to none of them, and they are dead simple. There are blood sample puzzles that will give us more crafting possibilities upon solving. It's the good old lights out puzzle type, which I had to look up the name of while making this video. You have played these puzzles many times before. Simple, but they can throw you for a loop if you're not careful. These are fine, but there's only really a couple of them. There are 3 vaults throughout the care center, each holding a quartz we need to open up the exit to the care center. Each vault has 3 symbols. We need to find the right combination. With one of the vaults, there is a pencil in the same room. We use it on a nearby notepad, which gives us the answer to enter the vault but a few feet away. So I will call this a quote-unquote puzzle in quotation marks. Just a regurgitator puzzle. The second vault is a bit more involved. There are a few scattered photos about a room with the vault in the background. Use them to find the right combination, which is better than what we did for the first one. There's at least some element of puzzles involved here. The third vault, we will get to that one later, but there is no puzzle we will have to solve for it. And that is more or less it for puzzles on the critical path. I mean, 7 and Village weren't stacked either, both on the quality and quantity front. And to be honest, other survival horror titles tend to do a better job with puzzles than Resident Evil, but this here felt like something tossed together late into development. Like they forgot puzzles are a key element of Resident Evil. That said, there is an optional one with Leon later, more of a scavenger hunt. There is a challenge named The Final Puzzle with a vague descriptor, one that seems to stretch the game itself. As of writing, people did find the solution, but sounds like they might have done some data mining. It's really quite out there with what you need to do for it. That's fine and all, but they should have done far more with puzzles along the critical path, both on the quantity and quality front. It is fine to ease off on them during Leon sections with the action focus, but the stretches for Grace should have seen far more usage of puzzles. There is more for Grace to deal with as she moves past the care center, but hold that thought for now. To conclude, I was on board with what they laid down here, enough to build a whole game around with this approach, taking the survival horror first approach as they did with 7 in the remake of 2 and tweaking the formula. If they added more unique zombies as the game progressed, or other enemy types to throw a wrench in the formula, or have some enemies behave more like mini-stalkers that we could kill with a bit of persistence, I would love to have seen what that would have looked like had they went all in with this approach. Put more emphasis on enemies interacting with one another, and how we could use that to our advantage. Of the RE Engine era titles, I have preferred the survival horror focused titles over the action. But there is plenty of action as well within Requiem, courtesy of Leon Scott Kennedy.
But I'm not on the menu.
While I enjoyed the Resident Evil 4 remake, I found its combat system a downgrade from its original source. I preferred the arcade design from the 4 to 6 era for combat. Emphasis on crowd control and deep rewarding mechanics, especially for 6 when it came to its combat system. Misplaced in the mainline title or the series at large, and its campaign did much to get in the combat's way, but my goodness, does it make Mercenaries mode a blast when you dig into it. In Requiem, combat handles like the remake of 4. Floaty, a bit sloppy, that use of inertia that every modern game loves to use, where every third-person shooter feels about the same since The Last of Us, give or take. There is fun to be had with what Requiem lays down here, but it does fall short compared to what the survival horror stretches offer. But it does have its moments. Leon, despite the years adding up, still keeps himself in top form. He has a few new tricks up his sleeve, like his melee weapon now being a hatchet rather than a knife, which we can use in a similar way. Use it for melee strikes, parries, stealth kills, instant kills when you deal enough damage. You have to be aware of its durability, like the knife. but you do not need to take it elsewhere to fix up. Leon can sharpen it at any point to keep it up to snuff. If it falls to 0, you will have to sharpen it before you could use it again. You can also use the environment on stunned enemies for an instant kill. Position yourself right with a stunned enemy and Leon takes advantage of his surroundings for a quite satisfying kill here. You can use melee strikes on stunned enemies for crowd control, but there are other options available. Certain enemies will carry melee weapons. Stun them or kill them for a drop, which you could use on another enemy. A one-time use. This may be a one-hit kill or open them up for an axe kill. I did have the occasional scenario where Leon would decide to throw that axe he picked up at an enemy on the other side of the room as opposed to the one right in front of them. Blister heads are a more common occurrence, but Leon has the skills to deal with them. Now there are other enemy types, but there is a disappointing lack of enemy variety for Leon's stretches. Many encounters can be a bit paint by numbers as a result. It is too bad because encounters that spice things up are much better. One enemy type can spew blood everywhere, which can bring back nearby zombies as blister heads. This adds a layer of unpredictability and chaos to these moments. But there's only a couple of these kind of encounters. Bringing up enemy dismemberment again, it is a major bummer how much Requiem scales back on it. Such a downgrade from what we could do back in the Resident Evil 2 remake. This leads to melee strikes lacking weight to their hits, and Requiem continues with the approach to its combat from the remake of 4 that I did not gel with. The vague nature of stuns. I prefer the approach from the 4 to 6 era where you knew what a shot would do. You could plan around that for handling crowds. This is not the case here. Is that next shot going to put enemies into a stun? Guess you'll have to shoot them and find out. This approach works fine if you're going for something slower, like Grace's sections. I welcome this approach in the remake of 2. A slower pace worked with it, but that unpredictability about it does clash with the faster pace and action focus. Playing the Mercenaries mode in the remake of 4 was a notable difference to the base game as it removed that ambiguity. On the other note of ambiguity, there are gun takedowns. If you're close enough to an enemy and they are weak enough, he will do a one-shot kill, even with a pistol. But again, I was never sure if that shot would be your standard shot or trigger the animation for a one-shot kill. That said, I'm not against unpredictability elsewhere. I welcome it. And there was one fantastic moment early on that had me sold, where I thought, you know, they might be able to pull this gameplay split off. That being the first encounter with a chainsaw when Leon arrives at the care center. Although Leon would have killed you to try and save this woman's life from the chainsaw man.
Mr. Kennedy, we need to leave immediately. What's going on? I don't know what's happening. Some kind of mass hysteria. The hospital is on lockdown. Doctor.
Now for this bit, it was less about Leon using the chainsaw. With the lack of dismemberment, it lacks plenty of weight in its standard strikes. Imagine something like this with how dismemberment in the remake of 2 worked. But it was how these zombies handled the chainsaw that was so fascinating and thrilling. The chainsaw is unwieldy. Kill the zombie holding it and it drops to the floor. It spins around for a time. It could damage you or damage others. And when the zombie picks up a chainsaw, they do not handle it in the best of ways. It's a struggle for them. They struggle with its weight and getting a handle on it as they swing it around. This can lead to some hilarious, chaotic situations. The moment that sold me was when one zombie swung it around in a careless manner, impaled another who ran at me and impaled me. It was a real inspired moment that had me looking forward to seeing what they'd do with Leon's combat. I played the stretch over and over to see the way zombies would interact with the chainsaw. I love how they can stumble forward and dart forward with the chainsaw in hand on the ground. There's this chaotic, unpredictable energy with a chainsaw when it's around. Of course, I wasn't expecting a chainsaw in every single combat encounter, but it is something the game could have gotten far more mileage out of. There are a couple more of these scenarios with chainsaws, but that's it. including one where you could get into a chainsaw duel with another. But no other encounters came close to matching that frantic unpredictability energy that first chainsaw encounter had. With that, let's shift through going through the major beats of Requiem, from the areas, their gameplay, and the plot, starting with the characters. We have a newcomer to the series with Grace Ashcroft, a real scaredy cat, a stark contrast from past protagonists and their skill set, or the everyman nature of Ethan Winters. Change of pace, to say the least. Was it a welcome one? To an extent. Her sharing the spotlight with Leon does take away from her character. She will grow over the course of the game, gaining more confidence, but there are stretches where we miss some of these key developments as the game shifts over to Leon, especially in the back half. She is a bit of an eccentric. Look at that desk of hers, the way she sits at their chair, or how she is wearing shoes on the bed in the flashback. With her shy, awkward nature, it could have been easy for her to become annoying. And she can be at points. They did go overboard with her stuttering.
If this is about the report you asked for yesterday, it'll be ready in 2 days tops.
But I will give major props to her portrayal by her actress. Not only does she convey her awkward nature well, but her scare nature. You can really feel that fear of Grace.
What is this? Hey! Help!
That said, Grace does have some issues that have popped up in the series' recent output. Her being a bit of a chatterbox during gameplay. To be fair, this is a common issue with most modern games. She can be a bit of a potty mouth, which is a real cliche as well. Although with her scaredy cat nature, I will give her a bit more leeway. Poor girl did witness her mother's murder in a brutal manner. And it's not like Ethan was a mute, but I do wish they scaled back on some of Grace's lines here during gameplay. Keep most of that to cutscenes. And again, the same case holds for about 99% of big budget games these days. Shifting to Leon, he does have some personal stakes to the story. While he seems to be holding back the hands of time as best as he can, there is something within that would like to have a word. He is dealing with Raccoon City Syndrome. Those black blotches on his skin are a sign of it, a dormant T-virus infection now emerging. Those who survived Raccoon City are now dying of it. There have been 6 confirmed cases so far. At the moment, there is no way of dealing with it. But Leon's not alone here. The one talking to him on the other line has it as well. That being Sherry Birkin, returning for the first time since Resident Evil 6. If you thought it sounded like Sherry in the trailers, you were right. It's the same voice actress from Resident Evil 6, which is a miracle in and of itself with how loosey-goosey Capcom can be with its shifting voice cast, especially since Resident Evil 6 came out in 2012. And Sherry is there. Do they do anything interesting with her? Not really. She will hack into things for information and exposition. Anything on Jake Mueller? No mention. Claire? Nope. I don't know why they hid her identity for so long. Leon sure takes a sweet time in saying her name, in a way that feels unnatural, a reveal for the sake of one that doesn't happen until the end of his second stretch in the care center. They should have revealed it was Sherry during that first conversation. And this Raccoon City Syndrome, Leon having it, I can understand. But Sherry, it does feel a bit odd that this would impact her considering what we know about her, what we saw in the remake of 2 and Resident Evil 6. When he is out investigating, Leon is riding in style here with his Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT. A new one's going to set you back about $215K. One of the more random product placements I've seen in recent memory. No doubt Leon loves that car, and I don't blame him. Try to shoot it, and he refuses. I'm sure Porsche also ensured that would not be the case. Speaking of random product placement, today's video sponsor is nobody. I did have a note here, this would be the perfect place to feature a sponsor if I had one for this video. Are there any other notable characters dealing with Raccoon City Syndrome? Ones that we already know? Well, do not get your hopes up. And speaking of getting our hopes up, our villain here, Victor Gideon. When I saw him in the trailers, I was not sure what to make of him. After finishing Requiem, I still don't, both in a positive and negative way. He does have great moments, but also felt like a missed opportunity. A former T-virus researcher at Umbrella, he thinks the world of one of Umbrella's co-founders, Oswald Spencer, in his research. Turn the volume up or have subtitles on when he's around, for he can get very quiet, only a little above a whisper at times.
Who are you?
Oh, forgive me. Dr. Victor Gideon. I run this center. It took forever to find you. You're not like other people, you know. You're quite unique. Through you, Elpis can finally be set free.
Why me?
Because my master made you who you are.
After having several larger-than-life villains, both literal and figurative, in RE7 and Village, Victor is a bit of a contrast. He is an imposing figure size-wise, and does make short work of Leon at the care center. It was the other side of him, how he talks, how he reacts. It was hard to get a read on him. His subdued nature in speaking causes a jolt when he does yell.
Wait! Grace! 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 There's no escaping your destiny.
It is a nice change of pace of having someone less in your face compared to recent entries. Unpredictability to what he would do. Like that moment of him leaving the hotel carrying out Grace with Leon in pursuit. The way he's so nonchalant and turning those around him into zombies sold me on him as a villain.
Is she okay?
Oh, she's fine. I'm just taking her home.
That said, I did have concerns going in that he would suffer the same fate like of those we came across in 7 and Village, where they exit stage left when they still had plenty of mileage left in them. Victor in a way has a similar fate, although it plays out in a different way. 7 and Village did have a larger cast of villains to deal with, while Requiem keeps it smaller. That other villain we'll come across later? Oh boy. Well, hold that thought for now, we'll get there. I will also note that Victor makes things far more difficult than they need to be in kidnapping Grace. The contrivances for the setup are many, starting from the FBI side of things, like how Grace's boss sends her to the Renwood Hotel to investigate a body exhibiting Raccoon City Syndrome, the same hotel where her mother, Alyssa Ashcroft, was murdered 8 years ago. One Grace witnessed firsthand, a time to face your fears kind of moment, to which she agrees to, but she has no one else from the FBI go with her and one cop that leaves her be. Victor needed to have many ducks line up in a row to abduct Grace this way. There is a note that we could find later that makes note of Grace's activities. She stays at the office late, then goes home and stays there. Seems like it would have been easier for Victor to grab her on the way home or at home, but we do have a plot reason to go to the hotel. There is something that Grace's mother left behind there 8 years ago, one that will become an important plot device at game's end. As this crime scene at the Renwood Hotel finds itself covered in yellow police tape, now is a good time to talk about everyone's favorite color, yellow. It is clear that Capcom took the yellow paint criticisms of the Resident Evil 4 remake to heart. Yes, yellow still exists to guide the player, there are still a few cases of yellow paint, but they dialed it back to something far less immersion breaking. There is better usage of lighting to guide the player and get their attention. Instead of covering boxes in yellow paint, they have small yellow stickers on them, akin to supply crates from Half-Life 2. Some usage of yellow is a bit more on the nose during Leon's stretches in Raccoon City, yellow cables on ladders or cases to grab our attention, but it is a definite step in the right direction, and nice to see Capcom do something about it. Although I'm not sure certain internet figures may feel that same way. Those used to yellow paint guiding them every single step of the way. If you were expecting a clip of Darkside Phil here, well, I did use a clip of him discussing yellow paint in the video I did on the RE Engine era of the Resident Evil last fall. But I did find another widely mocked figure whose brain is not firing on all cylinders talk about yellow paint in games.
Dude, that's just like Resident Evil. Labeling boxes that you can break with, wooden boxes you can break with yellow paint. I'm gonna be right at home.
I could hear the sounds of a triangle played by a stout Canadian in the distance going, "Whoa, buddy." To someone a bit more sound in mind, Alyssa Ashcroft, rest in peace, we hardly knew ye. Well, unless you played the Outbreak games. I was curious coming in how they would feature her. We did see her death in the trailer, so I was not expecting her long, but curious what kind of role she would play in the overall plot. Oh, and why did they change this one objective when we follow Alyssa? In the gameplay trailer, it was follow mom, which felt a lot more personal than escape from the hotel. During the stretch, I kept thinking, forget about Grace, I want to play as Alyssa again. She's been dreading this day for some time, but she steps into action without a moment's hesitation. Props to both actresses here on both ends selling the hell out of this scene. Grace scared beyond wit's end, and Alyssa keeping it together.
Oh my god. Mom, I feel like I'm gonna throw up.
Grace. Grace, look at me. Grab my hands. Okay, look at me. Look at me. In and out. Breathe in and out. Oh, Grace. I promise you I will explain this all to you one of these days. Grace. Please know that you are my hope. Never forget that.
What are you talking about?
Just... I love you.
I love you too.
There are rumors that we may see ourselves a DLC where we do play as Alyssa. Curious to see what they would do with that. Would it clear up unanswered questions that arise during Requiem? Or would it make an already mucky plot even muckier? Guess we'll have to wait and see. And more about the mucky plot later. Although what a failure of a kidnapping job they attempt here on Grace. Victor, you really need to step your game up. What did they do between those 8 years? Did Grace go into some kind of intense protection program that went back to her regular name afterward? For all we know, it does not seem they made another attempt at kidnapping her. And what we do learn about Victor's research, Grace does seem to have some great importance to his work. I could understand they would lay low for a time afterward, but 8 years seems a bit excessive with how important he treats his research. As well, once she is at the care center, you would think Victor would do a better job of protecting her. You would think once she frees herself, he would do everything to ensure that she does not die, considering the importance he places on her and what we will see in the game's later stretch. Then again, he does have her blood, which will also play an important role later on. As Grace, we'll come across a young girl locked up in the care center. Her name is Emily. She is blind. She seems innocent enough, but there's still an unsettling element about her. After dealing with Evelyn the last couple of games, I was on guard, especially with the identical cell with no one in it, but with a small hole and then a large hole in the roof. At the moment, we don't have the right access card to unlock Emily, but we'll find that in the care center's closing stretch. We will find that access card in the isolation ward. There lies the final vault with the last quartz to get ourselves out of here. Thing is, the sun, moon, and star engravings are too scratch to see, but the braille is still visible. Lucky for us, Emily can read braille. And now we have an access card to unlock her cell. And in a very design games for people like DSP, Aaron Hansen, and iDubbbz kind of moment, the game gives us a clear reminder about this.
These girls, they look just like...
Come on, Capcom. It's not as if this is some kind of second screen show from Netflix. I'm not folding laundry in the background while playing. What also makes this stretch clunky is Grace has another solution. It is convenient we can get Emily out of here with the key card we find in the office. Thing is, the other two vaults with the other two quartzes, they had braille on them as well. So Grace could have used those as a reference to match the braille with each symbol to solve the third vault. If Requiem was not so shortchanged with puzzles, I wouldn't have minded here of grabbing Emily to solve it, so to take away a puzzle from the player was a bit of a letdown. But this way it gives us a reason to get Emily out of her cell and bond with her for a time, or frustrate the player since we cannot use weapons as we carry her. As she opens the vault, we have to fend off a conga line of zombies. Not sure how this section balances itself, but good thing I had Requiem on me to deal with a blisterhead. With that, the monster, known as the girl from earlier, returns and grabs Emily, taking her into the care center basement. I would like to see how the stretch played out in a different way had we not need to bring Emily. Have a puzzle for the third vault similar to the previous vault. Grab the quartz, grab the card to free Emily, but have the monster grab Emily then. The grand scheme of Requiem, it is but a footnote, but one to make note of. As Grace jumps down below, we jump over to Leon in what felt like the right moment. Leon is a bit tied up at the moment with Victor, where I continue to struggle to get a read on Victor and what he has in mind. Quite the rings he has on his finger here. Although Victor, you should know better than to tie up Leon here and not take his knife and tool belt away.
You're a dead man walking.
Hey, can you hear me?
Leon, I
We will deal with Chunk, or Big Boy from earlier's brother, here in the attic. A bit of a by-the-numbers set piece. But once we get out of the attic, we can clean up the mess left behind by Grace, or lack of a mess. It is quite satisfying to run through this area with Leon after Grace. Take down the zombies that gave Grace a hard time with ease. These cupboards and doors we came across earlier as Grace, ones we couldn't access for they were warped, Leon can break them open with his hatchet. There is a fun, chaotic encounter in the room Leon can access with his hatchet. A video game classic. Flip a switch for the world's slowest door or elevator and fight off waves of enemies in the meantime. In come the Blisterheads. They put up a fight, but Leon has the skills to deal with them. As well, nice of zombies to roll out the red propane tanks for Leon here. Oh, so kind of you.
Well, that's my cardio for the week.
With that, we return to Grace. I was thinking at this point, have Grace as longer stretches, have Leon more as action palette cleansers. That works for me. Although I was not surprised when that shifted in the game's back half, one which I found to throw off the game's pacing. But we'll get to that in a bit. For now though, everything's been a-okay in my book. Grace, now in the care center basement, needs to collect 3 joint plugs to open the cells to free Emily. But now we have the girl, or the monster from earlier, to deal with. Requiem deals up on the atmosphere here, and the horror, not quite to the extent they did with 7. That said, they did take fan feedback and dial back from 7's horror, for that was a common complaint. The game was too scary. Which is too bad. I would love to see them match that level again. And this was a stretch for it. It's like your typical second area stretch of Resident Evil. It's a bit more linear, although it does keep some of the looping level design. The whole area in a way acts as a bit of an environmental puzzle, using the joint plugs to open sections and give lights to them. Lights that will keep the girl at bay. Loop around to collect them once you find the others. That element, well done. Again, bringing up the element of the girl, Capcom, let's drop the unkillable stalker stretches moving forward. They have run their course. It's been all downhill since the highs of Mr. X in the Resident Evil 2 remake where you hit that sweet spot. 7 and Village had these larger-than-life characters with the Bakers and Lady Dimitrescu that had a flair to their sections. But this stretch here with the girl feels paint by numbers and uninspired. Stalker section for the sake of one, where you know she's going to show up when you pick up a key item. You could have done what they did upstairs in the care center. Have a couple of killable mini-stalkers. Ones that patrolled a certain area of the care center like you did with the Chef and Chunk. It's time to move away from these unkillable stalker sections. As well, this section lacks the zombie variety we saw up in the care center. More standard zombies that don't give the player much room for using them against one another. While I felt most set-piece or action-heavy moments for Grace felt misplaced, I did enjoy this one here with a body on hooks. Have them drop down and pile up into an area that you need to cross? Something is going to happen here. And that predictability can be found in the right spot, which they pulled off here. Yes, you could let the track take them over and have the blades rip them apart, but I had fun speeding up the process by pushing them in. With all the joint plugs collected, we can free Emily and head up the elevator. Nice little fake out here with the elevator dropping. I did think for a second Grace was going to be without one of her legs operational. This was a heartwarming, sweet little moment between Grace and Emily. A nice moment of bonding. It takes heavy cues from the bonding between Sherry and Claire from Resident Evil 2, and that's fine with me. These kind of story beats work for a reason.
Here, I kept this safe for you. Thank you.
And now it's time for another walking simulator stretch, one that goes on far too long. Capcom, you really need to do something about these stretches stat. You had an easy way out here with switching to Leon for a quick little action palette cleanser. Of course, with the helicopter here, I'm sure we all had warning bells going off. We know the series' history of pilots flying off without us or being gunned down. I found it comical how untrustworthy they made the pilot Harry feel here, although he does not have the keys, so we do have that working for us.
What?
This? Old war wound. I can't run away even if I wanted to.
If this stretch in the nearby house had some puzzles to offset the walking simulator element, I would be more on board with it. And no, walking around a room, examining and rotating objects to find something does not count as a puzzle. Heading down to the secret lab, there is a note from the late Oswald Spencer, the co-founder, CEO, and president of Umbrella. A note about memory transfer through blood. A note about memory transfer, of transferring memories to a new vessel through blood. But the host must be able to withstand a mutated T-virus strain while preserving their own intelligence. Emily and the other girl, which we'll get the name of Marie from earlier, the one who turned into a monster, a long line of experiments. They are numbers 170 and 171. What about Grace here? You know, Emily does bear a resemblance to Grace. A listener final words to Grace make her seem to be quite special. Victor seems to think the world of Grace. Is she an escaped test subject from years past that Alyssa freed, in a similar way that Grace freed Emily? When I saw this note of memory transfer, I was thinking, are they going to bring back Oswald Spencer this way? Is he going to make a quote-unquote appearance through someone like an Emily or some test subject? Not exactly, although his presence hangs heavy over Requiem. Speaking of Victor Gideon, he's down here as well. Gideon is quite fitting as a surname, for he is quite giddy here, and the name Victor which feels like a nod to Victor Frankenstein. He does have a moment like the other Victor, realizing what he's done.
I've done it. I've done it.
And here we get a paint-by-numbers escape stretch. A predictable one of dealing with zombies as we walked through the area before. Gee, all those zombies locked up, extinguishers all around the place. There is a good frantic, chaotic energy to this escape, but it's nothing we haven't seen a million times before and got tired of by this point. With the helicopter keys in hand, we can now escape or make an attempt at it. You know how helicopters can be in this series, and with a crash, it's time for character swap back to Leon. Now we have ourselves a set-piece staple, the sniper section. Good thing this office Leon was in when the copter went down had a rifle in the corner. Time for us to protect Grace and Emily. Have to wonder what's going through their minds at this very moment. Sniper set-piece moments can turn into frustrating affairs, but not this one. It's fine. I did like this one little moment where they reunite. Emily seems to be on death's door, Grace is struggling to hold it together, but Leon reassures her. He holds the line as Grace escapes with Emily. Leon and Grace don't have a ton of screen time together, but I enjoyed when they did.
Grace,
Leon!
where's she?
Oh, this is Emily. Help me, I can't stop the bleeding.
Hey, look at me. You're gonna be okay. Yeah?
This is where a new enemy type shows up for Leon. One I mentioned earlier that can spray blood and turn other zombies into blister heads. An enemy type they could have gotten far more mileage out of. With that, our short palate cleanser action stretch is over and we switch back again to Emily. With a Resident Evil logic, this chapel we were in a moment ago connects to a water treatment plant. The monster from earlier in the care center basement still lives. You can see the growth in Grace here. She is afraid, but she needs to protect Emily from the monster. She has a reason beyond herself to step things up. So time to deal with this stalker once and for all. It's a classic case of flip 3 switches with some curveballs thrown along the way. Throw the switches to let light in and fry this monster once and for all. Good point to use the Requiem to buy ourselves some time. Not much to note here, it's a standard encounter, although the layout here did remind me of the first Birkin fight from Resident Evil 2 remake. But it seems like in that time fighting the monster, death has arrived for Emily. A CPR scene that goes on for an uncomfortable length of time where it seems like Grace is too late. Emily's dead. My goodness, that is dark. Grace failed her. But then Emily begins to move, and then turns into a monster herself to twist the knife. Props to the monster design here, quite an unsettling appearance. Here comes Leon to put Emily down, Grace begging him not to. And the game gives you a choice here. Shoot Emily or, well, doesn't matter actually. Leon will shoot her regardless. I tried to wait, not shoot, see what would happen. This felt like it could have been one of those impact the ending decisions. But we still have quite a ways to go yet. With how much this moment impacts the rest of the story, that would be quite the split that they would have to work with so early on. This was one hell of a scene. Again, props to Grace's actress here acting the living daylights out of it.
I wanted to save her!
You don't understand.
No, I never would have escaped without her. This is all my fault. Again.
Look, I get it. Trust me, I get it. But we're still alive. We have to keep going.
No.
And we reach the all is lost turning point moment. Grace failed. She's done fighting. Leon tells her we need to keep going, but she refuses. As she walks off, Leon is hit hard by Raccoon City Syndrome. Then there's Victor, chilling by the exit to the plant, telling her to join him to see what Elpis is. Elpis is a term he said in conversation we've come across in various notes. Racked with guilt over Emily's death, Grace goes with him. But Victor is not alone. As I was mentioned, the story has been a bit wonky so far, but we are only getting started on that front. Now, the game's story and plot takes a complete nosedive. Who is this Zeno that we heard Victor talking to earlier?
I've been waiting for you, Grace.
At this moment, I facepalmed and burst out laughing. Oh boy, where do we begin? Somehow, Wesker returned. Well, a cheap clone of Wesker, Zeno. At least he seems to be a clone. Victor will call me a cheap imitation later on. The marks on the skin, he seems to be dealing with the Raccoon City Syndrome as well. This is the same voice actor from the Resident Evil 4 remake of Wesker. To be fair, it's not like the series has not made use of clones in the past. Look at Resident Evil 6 with Ada and Carla. Although there is a good reason Capcom more or less used little of its story moving forward. Cloning gets into very dicey territory, where you could create get out of pot jail free cards if you go down that path. And as we will see in a bit, there is quite a bit of cloning going on here within Requiem. So it's not out of the picture they'd bring back a clone of Wesker. I like Wesker. Who doesn't? He was a great villain, but he had his time in the sun. When you could clone him to bring him back into the fold, it cheapens everything. As well, they do so little with Zeno here, to the point with a few tweaks, you could have removed him outright from the story. Very much a case of eye-rolling nostalgia baiting here. That said, I will commend him for his immaculate drip, as the kids say these days. He looks fly as hell with that suit of his and the leather jacket over it. He would not look out of place in a Metal Gear Solid game. This scene in the follow-up of entering Raccoon City is a bit disjointed. Like there is a scene missing. Why did Leon not go after Grace? He did have a temporary stoppage in dealing with the Raccoon City Syndrome. Could he not have followed her and tried to deal with Victor? They could have done that and have Victor make short work of him as Leon struggles with his condition. Or have him pass out when he first starts coughing after Grace walks away. But felt like something was missing here and left it feeling disjointed, which will only continue as we progress from here on in. Then you have the weird timing of Leon arriving in Raccoon City before the helicopter with Zeno, Grace, and Victor. Though they may have had a chat first before stepping in. Care Center is not far from Raccoon City. Still, the timing of the stretch feels disjointed. So, Raccoon City. Almost 30 years since the events that took place here. Leon strolls in without much of a fuss. To be fair, I'm surprised the series has not taken us back to Raccoon City sooner. At least for the mainline titles and not in a remake. It seemed like a in case of emergency break glass situation, where if sales dropped and fans grumbled, they could always return here to bank on it. That said, it's not like the series has been in that state as of late. When they revealed it in trailers, I did not agree in going back to Raccoon City. Have its presence still loom large, but we do not need an actual revisit. After playing Requiem, I do feel vindicated in that initial feeling. They should have left Raccoon City as a smoldering crater. Now with the remake timeline, they do have a bit of a note. For the original version of 3, Nemesis, you had the ending saying Raccoon City was literally wiped off the map with the missile strike. They left that a bit more open with the missile strike at the end of the remake of 3. Still, not the choice I agreed with, and seeing how things will turn out, those feelings felt justified. So here we are, the deserted streets of Raccoon City, stretching on for miles. Well, the game will limit us to where we could go. An earlier version of the game went by Apocalypse. They scrapped ideas for open world and multiplayer elements. It would not surprise me if one of those earlier versions had the idea of exploring a smoldering Raccoon City as an open world. They took what they had there and integrated it into Requiem to an extent. An open world Raccoon City may be an interesting thing to explore in a spin-off title, but not a mainline one. Once you open the Pandora's box of open world, you can't go back. Resident Evil does best with tight, interconnected level design. To add open world into the equation would result in a disaster. But this stretch does have its fill of surprises, like fighting a giant spider. After the disappointment of not having them show up in the remake of 2, it was really nice to see one here, even if the fight is run-of-the-mill.
that Raccoon City hospitality.
What follows is a long, tedious stretch of Leon picking up pieces to blow open a barricade. We will come across some BSAA camps, abandoned. What have they been doing here? Well, they did leave some things behind for us. Some good and not so good. On the good side of things, an item box to upgrade Leon's gear. Since the back half is more Leon heavy, we now collect points from killing enemies. Use them to upgrade our gear or buy new gear. There is some looping level design here in this more open stretch. Find the parts spread out in these more self-contained areas and loop back to the start. There are some optional stretches that award you with more goodies, but a good portion of the stretch gets a big out of me. There are some alright encounters, like when the infected that spray blood that bring back others as blister heads show up. Nice to see them make use of the chainsaw again at the gas station. There is an amusing little section of shooting out glass from under your enemies, although I ended up on the receiving end on that more than I cared to admit. But otherwise, it's paint-by-number stretch that drags on far too long. Zombies, beyond having some weapons, blend into one another. The BSAA infected do mix things up a bit. They pack heat, but their haphazard shots are all over the place. Use the environment around you for cover and get your shots in. They work alright as an additional enemy, but nothing special. When Leon comes across downed BSAA soldiers, he watches the video of them getting destroyed by Xeno. Leon will come across him later. I know they've not crossed paths, but Leon does know who Wesker is. It's not like he was a nobody. With his appearance and how he darts around, you would think he would realize something here about it. Same case goes for Sherry. By the way, Sherry, any word from Jake Mueller? No? Alright. With all these BSAA camps, are we going to come across characters we know from the series past tied to them? Don't get your hopes up, except for the usual suspect. After we make our way through Tedium, it's time for a non-rail set piece on a motorcycle, with Victor waiting for us and releasing the hounds. Capcom, I thought we got these kind of moments of your system after Resident Evil 6. At least it's not a walking simulator section, but this time was better spent elsewhere. I am glad that this was not the end of Victor, otherwise he would have gone down like a total goober. We have another goober to deal with instead with Xeno. And would you look at that, Leon stops right by where he began in Resident Evil 2 Remake after the gas station. Time for a pit stop at the RPD. I mean, it's not like we couldn't visit here if we were taking us back to Raccoon City. Plus, that allows for heavy asset reuse. Now in the right case, I do not have issues with asset reuse. Compared to other modern large budget franchises, Capcom puts out Resident Evil titles at a faster rate. One key reason is smart use of assets. That and already having templates already for remakes. From Software's output and the Yakuza series makes smart reuse of assets allows them to put out releases at a faster rate than others. So done right, the player's not going to mind, but there are some glaring flaws when it comes to asset reuse that feel uninspired waiting for us later on. But at the moment, it was nice to walk down memory lane, or what remains of the station. Rebel blocks many areas. I did like the downplayed remix using the main hall theme from the original RE2. There was a nice moment stopping by Marvin's desk.
Hey, Lieutenant Brenna. Kennedy. Reporting for duty.
At a couple points, including Kendo's gun shop, Leon will have a couple flashbacks. You know who does not appear in them? Claire or Ada. Does Sherry bring up any of them over the line? No, it's as if they do not exist. There was a time to pipe up, you two. Now would be it. Same case goes for the STARS office. I know Leon runs in different circles than them, but a couple lines about Rebecca, about Chris, Jill, and Barry would have been nice to have here. Leon will come across Xeno and Grace in the RPD. As mentioned, the back half does throw a wrench into the character growth of Grace. We have long stretches without her. What did she talk about with Victor Xeno along the way over? As a result, her shifts in character growth feel a bit more disjointed. Xeno lets us in on what Elpis is and who Grace is.
Covert military units from every country on Earth come to Raccoon City for one purpose. To find Elpis.
What is Elpis?
The power to upset the military balance of the world. The last virus, created by Spencer. Designed to control human consciousness.
Mind control?
They couldn't let it be stolen. So they launched the missile strike to hide it.
To hide a virus. Why do something so extreme?
Extreme? Is it? When the president tried to investigate, they had him assassinated. And you are the key to retrieving Opus.
Emily.
In a way. But not the girl you met. So many attempts. So many failures. Such a waste.
What do you mean?
Copies. Crafted to duplicate you. All useless. All scrapped. They each have their own sad story.
Back to a Grace stretch. Well, not Grace. We go back to 1990. This is Chloe, which you will find in a note. Or if you decide to switch the camera from first to third person to deal with the stealth like I did, it does show her name when you do that. Oh man, did I loathe this stretch. Another walking simulator bit. One involving stealth. And it's back in the orphanage from the Resident Evil 2 remake. Capcom, did you really think that people like that stretch? I know it's all over now, doors locked became a bit of a meme amongst fans, but not in an endearing way. They got tired of hearing it over and over while trying to avoid Chief Irons in that forced stealth section.
It's all over now! Doors locked!
If I were to replay all of Requiem beyond Leon's stretch before in Raccoon City, this would be one of those moments that gets me to reconsider. Even if it's still quite short, it is still a drag. Capcom, cut down these kind of stretches. I understand show don't tell. They could have had Xeno explain this all to us instead of seeing it firsthand. But if you're going to do so, at least make it fun. If you want to dial back on combat, fine, but at least throw a few puzzles in at least. Modders, do your thing if you can of ways to skip these kind of stretches. Although I will note the girls here with their shaved heads, the surgical scars, and glowing red eyes were quite unsettling. Underneath the orphanage, we can open up a path to an Umbrella lab. Chloe is an experiment, a test subject grown in the lab. They're trying for successful memory transfer, but still no dice, and still to the present day. There's an unsettling picture of Oswald Spencer with young girls from the orphanage, test subjects. Unless I missed a note that mentions it, is there a reason that it's only girls that they make? Back to the present, Xeno lets Grace know that she is the original that they've cloned after, which does seem a bit odd considering what we know about Grace so far. Seems like her age does not add up with the clones. Looks like these clones started in at least the early 80s after the Chloe flashback, which would make Grace in her mid-40s give or take, which does not gel at all with her appearance and her life. But we will learn later why they put a lot of hope into Grace due to a different connection. Bringing up asset reuse again, we return to Leon as we get an eye-rolling case of uninspired nostalgia bait.
Mr. Kennedy, I had a feeling you'd make an appearance. Sorry, but I don't have time to spare. Have fun.
This Mr. X chase does open up other areas of the station blocked by Rebel earlier, but it is a short one and nothing major to note. Same goes for the boss fight with him outside. Does okay with using the combat mechanics, but nothing special. Bringing back the Tyrant, a lazy, uninspired choice. Remove the motorcycle chase from earlier and have Leon fight Victor here. There is no need to bring Mr. X back. He had his time, this only cheapens our time against him back in the remake of 2. After a long descent and dealing with plants and a plant boss, Leon reaches the entrance of Ark. I swear Umbrella must have a whole mini-city underneath Raccoon City. And we are not alone down here. I'm not only talking Grace, Xeno, or various creatures. I'm talking about so-called elite guards, as the game calls them. Elite is a bit of a stretch here, for these stretches against them are quite awkward. Like they needed a cover system for them to work, but they did not want to implement one, which is fine by me just for one section, to which leaves me asking, what was the point of including them? You could do a sniper section, but these elite guards never should have made it into the game. They go down like a bunch of goobers, where the game handicaps their AI so we could deal with them according to the game's combat mechanics. And do you know who should have not been in the game? The commander here. We fight in an uninspired rehash of Krauser's knife fight from the remake of 4. Now, is this Hunk? All signs point to yes, with how he talks, the neck snap, it's the same voice actor of Hunk from the past. Why do this to Hunk? He's always been an amusing character in the shadows, or one to throw down with in Mercenaries mode. Why job him out here like a total bum? By the way, whatever happened to that rumored spin-off title starring Hunk? Is that still happening? Did they cancel it? Was it even a real project to begin with? Anyways, from here on in, it's labs, labs, and more labs. I do dig the sterile looks and atmosphere, but again, it's something the series has overplayed by this point. Once again, the word uninspired comes to mind. There is a note here we could read about the current 2026 product catalogs of weapons and their prices. That tyrant we fought earlier goes for $120 million? The one that shows no major improvement since the late 90s, give or take? I did have a chuckle at the price of Nemesis listed as negotiable. So all this time, Mark has been plugging away underneath Raccoon City. What about this Elpis they've spoken of? This key they believe Grace to be. They believe that Elpis is the answer, Spencer's last virus. The connections we learn about in 7 and 8 want to access it, but they need the right password. One wrong password and Art goes down and Elpis goes with it. They believe Grace knows the password, but she does not. Xeno makes short work of Leon in his current state, but Leon and Grace escape for now. There have been a few throwback lines from Leon in Requiem. Most cases I was indifferent to, but this one here with Grace did give me a chuckle.
Are you okay?
Me? I feel like $1 million.
As mentioned earlier, I did enjoy these moments between Grace and Leon. A grizzled veteran with little fear with a newcomer filled with many. When the game focuses on these moments, the story does shine for a bit.
This place. Raccoon City was where it all began for me. When it all happened, I couldn't make a difference. So I'm here now.
We can't stop Xeno.
He said something about you having a password. What was he talking about?
I don't know. I'm sorry. Here.
I'm going back. I'm gonna destroy Elvis.
I'm coming with you.
No, you're not.
I don't want any more regrets. Whatever it takes, count me in.
But that shine won't last long, especially in its closing stretch. Grace needs to clear the way forward for Leon, which takes us back to playing as Grace. A welcome return with how much of Leon's section dragged. And a welcome return for actual gameplay after the walking stealth simulator section at the orphanage. Although it's another case of endgame Resident Evil quality that plagues many entries, we go back to something more interconnected, but nowhere near to the level of the care center. There are zombies, nothing unique about them, they're all the same. And for another case of nostalgia baiting and asset reuse, liquors. Do they act any different from the liquors of old from years past? No, not at all. Same old, same old. Although we can find or craft acid bottles that will one-shot them. We can feel the presence of the late Oswald Spencer, co-founder and CEO of Umbrella, throughout Requiem. From the mouths of Xeno and Victor and scattered notes. What was Elpis? What was his final virus? Well, take everything the series established about Spencer and more or less throw it out the window. It's time for Requiem to lay waste to establish lore. Remember that disc we grabbed from the hotel at the game's beginning? The one Grace's mother Alyssa hid away 8 years ago? Well, it's time to make use of it. Which you think Victor would have found when he kidnapped Grace at the game's beginning. Did he not check her for anything? As well, why did Grace not use it on any other computer we came across earlier? I know it's an older physical format, but I'm sure one of these computers could have had one that worked in our journey. There are a few things on this disc. like Alyssa Ashcroft conducting an interview with Oswald Spencer. It's a bit vague when this interview takes place, probably before Spencer disappears, might be after the trials in 2004. Bit hard to get a read on. But before we get to the heart of the interview, we do switch back to Leon. The T-Virus is really starting to do a number on him, one that will impact gameplay, where Leon will slow down for a time and impact his vision. I did have an amusing moment where it did show up at the worst possible time, trying to stealth my way by some liquors.
Haven't changed much, have you?
Not much to really note about the stretch. Again, like most Leon stretches beyond the chainsaw bits, throw some conveniently placed propane tanks at liquors to kill them, hold off a wave of generic zombies as the world's slowest elevator takes its sweet time arriving. Leon is more or less at death's door now with the virus within. This marks a shift back to Grace. Now we could see the rest of the interview Alyssa had with Oswald Spencer. And now we get the major revelations of Elpis, of Grace, and Spencer. In his interview, Spencer expresses remorse for what he did, that he was wrong. Happiness cannot be achieved at the expense of others. Yes, this is coming from Oswald Spencer, co-founder, CEO of Umbrella, for decades running unethical experiments. Who knows how many people died in his wake due to his and Umbrella's research, whose work and weapons have caused untold destruction. The man we saw in his later years in Resident Evil 5 isolated away, but still conducting horrific experiments. The man who is to become a god. A man with a list of atrocities a mile long. Now, the Spencer we saw in Resident Evil 5 was him in his final days, a bit off his rocker, seemed to be senile. It is possible that between the Raccoon City incident and before he went senile, he did have a moment of clarity, where he came to a realization of what he had done. Is it possible? Sure. Does it feel earned? None whatsoever. Does it feel like an asshole that mucks with the established series lore? 100%. I'm going to come back to this character assassination of Spencer, but let us continue for now. Spencer takes in a girl, one alone in the world, to help make amends. Well, I don't know if that exactly counts, but okay. One he says is perfectly normal. By perfectly normal, does he mean she is a random orphan, or is this a test subject created but cared for like a normal child? I will again revisit this thought later, hold it for now. That child is Grace. On the note, there is a note from Spencer's butler, Patrick, to Alyssa, one from after his death. The final will and testament of Spencer was unintelligible save for one passage. One designated Alyssa as the guardian of his adopted daughter, Grace. Again, more to say about this, but let's make our way through the final stretch first. Finding Leon, Grace and him head back to deal with Elpis. Leon suggests we destroy it, but the choice is ours. We could also enter the password and release it. Does the game let you write the password? No, it does it for you. 4 simple letters. Hope is the password. You know, Oswald, that's not the best password hygiene. You might want to throw in a couple more short words, some numbers, a special character or two. I know they do this for the sake of being dramatic. They at least explain they only get one shot at the password, so I do get the hesitation of Zeno and the connections. I've used the word goober a few times here to describe characters and their actions, but what Zeno does here makes him the biggest goober of all. Does he do any testing of what Elpis is once it's released? No, without a moment's hesitation, he injects himself with it. Turns out, Elpis is an antiviral. It neutralizes any infections and mutations. Zeno loses his powers. Grace injects Leon with Elpis, freeing him from the T-Virus and Raccoon City Syndrome. And what better time for Victor Gideon to return coming strolling in? Thank goodness, I did think for a while there they did kill him off with that motorcycle chase. Showing his devotion to Spencer, he realizes his master's brilliance. I use that term lightly. He seems to think Spencer was playing 4D chess against everyone here.
Amazing. I am humbled by my master's genius.
Your research was wrong. Elpis wasn't a weapon. There was never a key.
Spencer's paper was obviously incomplete. There was no connection between Grace and Emily.
Do you know how much time and money I wasted on this?
Don't you see the genius? With Elpis, all virus-based weapons are useless. The world order will be thrown into chaos.
We wanted a weapon.
Instead, Spencer gave us anarchy. I will carry his torch and bring his vision to life.
You? You and Spencer were a means to an end.
Yet he outwitted you all.
Spencer defied us and paid the price with his life. He was nothing.
You are nothing but an imitation.
It's over, Victor. The Connections is done with you!
You know, should it not be the Connections are done with you? It sounds awkward with is. And so ends Xeno, we hardly knew ye. And to be honest, we never should have known you at all. A pointless addition that adds nothing and only muddies things further, takes away from the character of Wesker. You could have had a few tweaks to the plot to keep it only with Victor. And Elpis is this antiviral that can lay waste to any virus-based weapon, which sounds like a good way to lay waste to the future lore of the series when that comes into play. But as Victor said, Spencer gave them anarchy. The way he says anarchy gets me every time. Props to the actor for knowing when to ham it up with Victor. So Victor wants to take advantage of this, but a recovered Leon puts a stop to that. Like more or less all the bosses, it's a shoulder shrug as far as enjoyment goes. But there is our trusty rocket launcher to finish him off. Which should have been the end. For all the uninspired asset reuse with enemies, his final form tops them all. Victor had the Nemesite parasite within him, hence his appearance. Well, time for him to unleash it, as we more or less fight its final form from Resident Evil 3 Remake. Well, beyond not needing a railgun like Jill did. Although you can see the extent to Leon's parrying capabilities here. You can parry those giant tentacle attacks. The first phase against Victor was okay, but having him die there would have been far better than this rehash. Despite vanquishing Victor, it seems like this will be the end of Grace and Leon. There is no way out. Which would be one dark ending. But no, some familiar faces from Resident Evil Village return. Although one is missing, at least in person.
Leon S. Kennedy?
Depends who's asking.
Alpha, you read me, sir? Yeah, they're safe. I got him. Yes, sir. Mr. Kennedy, I have a message from Captain Redfield.
Before we continue what happens after the scene, let's rewind time a bit. What happens if we choose to destroy Elpis? What if we do what Leon suggested? Well, he helps Grace escape, but he has no chance against Xeno, who still has all his powers and Leon's still dealing with Raccoon City Syndrome. My goodness, talk about a slap in the face. Look, I'm all for bad endings, try again, but this was ice cold and makes Leon look like a total chump. I was waiting for Xeno to pull a golf club here to finish him off. But that's not the real ending. Let's resume the other one with releasing Elpis. Leon's back to his normal self after his dosage. But how would it affect Sherry? After all, she does have the condition with the G-virus within her. She no longer have those regenerative abilities of hers. But then there's one line here in the ending that had me going, oh, come on, when Grace and Leon talk about Emily.
Grace, I didn't hit any of her vitals.
Really, Capcom? Leon did not hit any of her vitals? I get why they had her die earlier, a means of getting Grace to give up and join Xeno and Victor in releasing Elpis. Clunky, but it worked. Why could they not do something like kidnap Emily instead and force Grace's hand that way? Even then, again, that also sounds clunky. On those situations where they want to have Emily gone for the last stretch of the game, but still give her a happy ending. My goodness, it's just another very clunky moment in the story full of them. But at least Emily and Grace seem to get a happy ending. It's quite warming that Grace is now raising her and teaching her how to read, for Emily can now see, thanks to Elpis. But we do have one final scene back at the Ark, setting up a sequel or DLC hook. Although, you know, this series might just end up being another drop plot thread.
Remaining BSAA forces have been neutralized. Retrieving the objective before they send in the wolves.
So let's circle back here on a few things I discussed earlier, like the Spencer retcon. As mentioned earlier, feels unearned, feels like an asshole. Sure, he could feel remorse after the Raccoon City incident, For something on that scale could open his eyes to what he had done. It is possible he felt that for a short time before returning to his ways, becoming senile, combination of the two with how we see him in Resident Evil 5 and its DLC, back to the ways of experimenting on people. That feels cheap and undercuts the established lore. Which leads me to wonder, will they finally pull the trigger on a remake of 5? At least if they want to do that, they could tweak some of the lore to establish what we see of Spencer here. Terrible idea, but that could give them a bit of a way out. Speaking of giving them an out, this post-game report we could read. Grace's report, the truth behind Raccoon City. This lays even further waste to the established lore. The connections came up a few times near the end with Zeno and Victor. Well, turns out the connections have been around far longer than we thought, at least in the 1980s. The various events throughout the series lore, more or less the connections had a hand in it. They had moles within Umbrella. James Marcus, one of the co-founders of Umbrella, one forced out by Spencer, was part of the connections. Zeno brought this up, but the missile strike on Raccoon City was not launched to prevent spread of infection. It was for the connections to protect the Ark and shift the blame to Umbrella and Spencer. It was the connections who lobbied for the missile strikes. Guess it was them who had Simmons from 6 make it a reality. The goal of the connections was to acquire Umbrella assets along with Elpis. Tricell from Resident Evil 5 ties to the connections. The Umbrella trials, the connections had high pressure in high up places. A lot of things here shift to, the connections were behind it, which undercuts a ton of established lore. You know, it would not surprise me if the connections had ties to get Grace's boss to send her in all alone to the hotel in Redwood. Or if the connections were the cause of Spencer burning his mouth on soup. They had moles serve it to him extra hot that one time. Anything that happened, the connections had a part in it. Look, I do not mind having the connections as this unknown party working from the shadows. We did get some insight into them in 7 and Village, but they were driving things forward in the story. I don't have much of an issue of that. This is a case of working through the past lore and twisting it. Connections had a hand in so many key moments of the lore of Resident Evil. Ones that fall apart when you give it a moment's thought to the logic. I hate when franchises do this. Unless you plan this from the very start, do not do this, writers. Leave it be. You only muddy the waters further. That said, with these tweaks to have the connections' fingers in every single pie, there could be more to Spencer's actions than given, where it's less a case of him feeling remorse and him getting petty revenge on the connections. According to the report, he does seem to be aware of what's going on all around him. So why not burn everything to the ground if they're going to get in his way? Let them think that Elpis can control human minds. That's one way of looking at it. And who knows, a DLC may clear some of this up. But so much of this comes across as sloppy writing that I can only think that's going to make things worse. But let's look at a few more key elements of the plot being messy. Like Grace here and being nobody special. This is one of the threads of the plot that I had a hard time spinning my head around. Is Grace some random orphan that Spencer adopted? This is what Spencer said about Grace during his interview with Alyssa.
Is she perfectly normal? Just an average child needing a home?
Now that is a bit of a vague statement. Remember who this is coming from as well. Oswald's definition of perfectly normal might not match what you or I would consider perfectly normal. The way he words it I see as one of two ways. One, Grace is some random orphan. No ties to anything with Spencer or Umbrella's work. A nobody. In his will he mentions that Grace is his adopted daughter. The other is that Grace is a clone, but a normal one. One where they did not experiment on. Raised as a child instead of a test subject. This is the one I lean toward being the truth. There are a few reasons for it. One is Grace's appearance. She bears a strong resemblance to Emily and the other clones. There's also the moment after the Chloe flashback where Grace is talking to Zeno, where she has flashes of her past. Now this one is a bit vague. Due to the effect of the flashes, it seems like she's remembering some long lost forgotten memory, like a clone would. You've seen these moments happen in other games, movies, shows, and yet she sees flashes of recent events throughout the game, so not quite sure here. There's also the vague nature of Grace's age. The game takes place in 2026. She was a teenager in the flashback from 2018. We do not have a solid idea of when the interview from Alyssa is from, after the trial in 2004, but before he went to seclusion, before the trial of Umbrella. For that also had me wondering, when does Alyssa come into possession of Grace? As mentioned earlier, Patrick reached out to Alyssa after Spencer's death. In the will he left, he appoints Alyssa as Grace's guardian. How long was this after the interview? Did others besides Spencer take care of her after he went senile? I sure hope Grace was not around him, especially after we saw the experiments he did as Estate in the Resident Evil 5 DLC, Lost in Nightmares. Now, with the clones itself, I've seen others wonder why the connections went after Grace. Should she not be far older than she was if she was the original? Those cloning experiments go back to the 1980s. But I do see it more as them thinking that Grace was special due to being Spencer's adopted daughter, which is why I think they zeroed in on her. On another note, is it possible that Grace is actually special and does have Elpis within her? The zombie at the beginning of the game does bite her. Should that not infect her? Remember, this was a cutscene. It's a mandatory bite, different from one happening in gameplay. As well, why did Spencer appoint Alyssa as Grace's guardian? Was seeing her hold Grace more than enough for him during their interview? Why did he have such a high opinion on Alyssa? How did she land that interview? I mean, he is one eccentric old man, but for him to have a jumbled mess of a will and have this one passage be clear, awkward and disjointed, to say the least. Again, a common thread for the game's plot. Before the reveal of Spencer adopting Grace, but after the cloning reveal, I did wonder how Alyssa came to care for Grace. I was thinking her work as an investigative reporter had her looking further into Umbrella. She found Grace in a similar way that Grace finds Emily and decides to raise her. Coming back to Elpis here. Boy, that's a plot reset if I ever heard one. An antiviral that can neutralize any kind of bioweapon? I know Victor mentions it can drive the world to chaos. And having that as a weapon, a polar opposite of what we have seen in the series, could be interesting. Still, it feels like something they will drop or tweak to get themselves out of a potential corner they've written themselves with it. Someone makes a virus that's able to counter it or get around it somehow. Again, the more I think about the plot of Requiem, the less it makes sense. Yes, you could say that for many stories. You could say that for many Resident Evil plots. I did a fair amount of tearing down the plots of 7 and Village, but Requiem here is a whole other ballgame, both in the clarity of its plot and how it impacts the lore at large. I could keep going here on many fronts. Like what was going on here with the memory transfer through blood that they were going for. Seems like they were looking for a vessel to bring Spencer back through. Why did Victor self-destruct that place? Seemed like they had quite the operation going on there with that blood. Did they drop it all for Elpis? I was thinking there'd be something involving Alex Wesker and Natalia from Revelations 2. Remember that cliffhanger? Where it seemed like Alex Wesker's personality was starting to emerge in Natalia as a result of Alex transferring her consciousness? Seems like there could have been some ties there. But no, another one of the many drop plot threads throughout the series. What about Raccoon City Syndrome? Does it affect everyone who survived Raccoon City? Will it affect everyone? But there is one final thought I must bring up about the plot. Of course, the most important question of all. Who is the lucky Mrs. Kennedy? I did not read the leaks before beating the game, but I did read up on them afterwards and how people were reacting to them. Of all the things people zeroed in on, Leon and his wedding ring seemed to receive the most attention. Oh shippers, you and your ways. To be fair, it's been a running joke for years how the series handles love and romance. Chris posting can still give me a chuckle or two. So, who is Leon's wife? He makes no mention of her whatsoever throughout. Even in his final moments with Grace, no mention. Could it be Claire? Doubt the way he talks about Chris later. Ada? It's not long, it's wrong. I think that ship sailed long ago. Sherry? I mean, she is wearing a ring, although on her pinky, but that may be due to the T-virus affecting her hand. The ring does look quite similar. She still goes by Sherry Birkin on her name tag. Besides, with their history, that could be a bit questionable. Sherry suggested to Leon and Claire at the end of the remake of 2 they should adopt her. Yes, it's been many years, but still comes across as a bit questionable with that. But why did Capcom show Sherry having a ring? Was it to throw the fans into a frenzy trying to figure it all out? After all this, it would be hilarious if Mrs. Kennedy was some random civvy we have never met. I would give Capcom credit for doing something like that to annoy shippers. I have to wonder how much annoyance shippers have caused devs over the years. Granted, they have done themselves no favors in how they've handled romance in the series. This whole thing about Leon and his wedding ring, I would have missed it if I didn't look up the game's concept art in the menu. There it shows a hand with a ring, clear as day, which he puts on it at the game's end after walking away from Grace. But you do not get a clear view of it, although people use free cam mode to confirm that yes, he does put on the ring. Seems like a nice moment for Leon to walk off into the sunset and enjoy his retirement. Although you know how this series is. I've said for years they need to find a way to give the older characters a nice send-off instead of having them disappear for ages. And you know what? The ending of Village did give them a viable option to move the plot forward and have more returning characters pop up. One that didn't need a return to Raccoon City. Instead, inner BSAA warfare. We saw at the end of Village that the BSAA were using BOWs, something Chris was against and made his way to headquarters. You could have had a game where this was the focus. If you wanted to go action heavy, you had a straightforward approach. How many past characters in the series have ties to the BSAA? It's easy to rope them in, give them a send-off that fans have wanted for years. Now, I'm not saying we needed like a game equivalent of the Avengers where everyone shows up and easily amused fans clap like seals, but Capcom, you gave yourself this option at the end of Village. Why didn't you take it? If you want to do the survival horror and action split, you could have someone like a Grace Ashcroft as a pencil pusher at the BSAA get caught up in the situation. As mentioned earlier, I did not agree with a lot of the choices here in Requiem, especially in the back half. Raccoon City should have remained a smoldering ruin. Established lore should have remained as is instead of muddying it up. Now, to be fair, the story for the series has always been a mess. It's not like Requiem is the first. Series of dropped plot threads, contrivances, retcons, head-scratching logic, characters acting like idiots instead of themselves. It's up to us to take down Umbrella, Leon said at the end of Resident Evil 2. And by us, he meant the US government, not us the player. A cult kidnapped the president's daughter? Let's send in a lone agent with a pistol, a pack of gum, and no understanding of Spanish. Resident Evil 6 more or less happens because for one of the most powerful men in the world, if it ain't wrong, it's wrong. Resident Evil 7 did make the right choice in stepping away from the convoluted lore at large. Stripped things down. Even then it had many major issues, like the inconsistency of how the mold affects people, the way that felt like it acts to fit the plot as need be, the whole choice at the end with Mia and Zoe. Village had Chris acting like a total nincompoop to Leon for the sake of the plot. Bringing up Spencer again, Village undercuts Umbrella in his work with his meeting with Mother Miranda in his younger years. Something that felt like it was there for the sake of it to make a connection to the past titles. But what we have here in Requiem, it's a mess the series has not been since into the likes of 6. It's messy like 6, but in a different way. It mucks with the established lore in an awful way. Playing up the nostalgia and throwback factor was a fool's errand. For it's not like the series has been short of nostalgia as of late. 3 remakes since 2019. If rumors are true, we may be getting more soon, as soon as next year. Again, rumors, but there seems to be more evidence popping up for their existence. Despite how Capcom seems to ignore Claire since the remake of 2, we may be hearing about a Code Veronica remake soon enough. A few years ago, Capcom did shut down a Code Veronica remake fan project. They did the same for a Resident Evil 2 remake fan project when they were making the official remake. The other rumor with more concrete backing is a remake of Resident Evil 0. An actor listed a Project Chamber on their resume that they did performance capture with Beyond Capture Studios, a studio that has worked with Capcom on the recent Resident Evil titles. Project Chamber seems to be a nod to Rebecca Chambers. What about a remake of Resident Evil 5? Well, that one's a bit more up in the air. I dread seeing if these rumors are reality. Remaking 2 titles of the series I put near the very bottom of the mainline titles? No thanks, bro. Leave them be. Now, I see others say, but if you let them remake a bad game, they can make it better. True, but you know what they could do instead? You could have that team make a new game. Whatever happened to that Hunk spinoff? Or the rumored Revelations 3 starring Rebecca? Or have the teams at Capcom take a crack at something new altogether? Take a shot at a new horror IP with all they've learned. Give them room to work outside the confinements of Resident Evil. If you're so insistent on having stalker sections all the time, why not take a crack at a spiritual successor of Haunting Ground? Now, I understand how risky new IPs and how remakes are safe bets with development costs, but Capcom has put out new IPs in recent years and have more coming up. I've said this in several videos now, but come on Capcom, take a chance here. For I am so fucking tired of these horror remakes. Enough is enough. Although I will note the funny timing of the statement. As of writing, the Fatal Frame 2 remake is right around the corner. A game that already had a remake, mind you, back in 2012 on the Wii. I do plan on checking out the new remake, probably going to be in the next video on the channel. But Capcom, when will it be enough? Are you going to touch 5, 6? Are you going to make another remake of the first game? When will it end? Well, once the sales start slowing down. The Resident Evil 2 remake is the best-selling game in the series at a little over 17 million copies. The remake of Resident Evil 4 sits at around 12 million. It was the fastest title in the series to hit 10 million sales. That said, Resident Evil 7 is not far behind Resident Evil 2 remake sales-wise, a bit short of 16.5 million. Resident Evil Village is around 13.5. So when I see these numbers, part of me wonders how much this factored into the gameplay split of Requiem. Make a game to try to please both audiences. Those who liked and bought the survival horror-oriented approach of 7 in the remake of 2, and those who liked the action focus of the remake of 4. Instead of trying to use a merged approach like Village, they decided to split each side off into one game. And from a sales perspective, as of writing, there are no concrete sales numbers announced, but Steam charts paint a story picture of sky-high sales. The peak player count on Steam for Requiem sits at about around 340k, about double the high of the Resident Evil 4 remake, and about triple the high of Village. Could those numbers peter off? They could. Resident Evil 6 did have a strong start for sales but petered off. Its reception and lagging sales did get Capcom to reevaluate the future of the franchise. They stripped things down back to the series' roots for Resident Evil 7. One of those interesting what-if scenarios had they decided to continue with a more action-oriented direction, but was the right soft reboot at the right time. I did have concerns going in with Requiem that would require a series reboot, something that would require more of a fresh start for Resident Evil 10, which is still probably a good 4 to 5 years away, but I do not see that happening with the game's initial reception. The split of gameplay seems to have worked, sales-wise. Yes, it does feel quite disjointed at times, like a decision made later on in development, scrapped ideas thrown together. To be honest, it was more coherent than I thought it would be overall. They decided to do another sequel in a similar vein. They could have the idea in mind from the beginning, but is going that split always going to please the audience? Well, we'll have to wait and see. Before wrapping up this video, there was one element of Requiem I have yet to touch on, its future additional content and DLC. Boy, is it lacking at the moment. Beyond Insanity mode, it's slim pickings. What about Mercenaries mode? What about future DLC? One rumor is an Alyssa-based DLC. Will that answer some lingering questions, or will only muddy the waters further? It's also why I have not given much thought to ranking Requiem in the grand scheme of the series. The multitude of DLC for Resident Evil 7 did wonders for boosting my feelings on the title. The remake of 4's additional content and DLC, pretty good. For Village, the Shadows of Rose DLC got a bit of a shoulder shrug for me. I'm guessing we will hear more in the coming months. If those rumored remakes are true, we may hear about them around that same time. Wrapping up here, I'm still not sure what to make of Requiem. It's an oddball of a title in a different way from recent entries. One that's all over the place. Yet, despite the split, which I had concerns about going in, they did manage to pull it off, to an extent. More in the first half. It's the back half where quality drops on several fronts, which is on par for the series. But this drop is something else. It's a mishmash of ideas when they should have focused on one, the other, or merged them. But to split them off created issues that weren't present in past titles. Again, that early stretch as Grace at the Care Center, fantastic. The most enjoyment I've gotten out of the survival horror side of the equation of the RE engine era. It's tense, full of decision making to always keep you on your feet. It's too bad that beyond a few encounters, Leon's stretches can't reach those same highs. More by the numbers and nothing major to evolve from what they did with him in the remake of 4. Of course, there are other lingering issues as well. The slog of a prologue, an uninspired stalker for Grace to deal with, too many walking simulator sections, lack of puzzles, pacing issues and a loss of momentum in that second half, and a plot that mucks around with the lore of an already messy lore. The more you think about the plot of Requiem, the less it makes sense, which again you could say for the vast majority of stories. Same goes for the Resident Evil series, but here is on a whole new level. Its back half also feels especially uninspired with the nostalgia baiting. Going in, I felt that they should have left Raccoon City as a smoldering ruin, and that feeling has only grown after beating Requiem. All this results in a game not sure what it wants to be, a lack of strong identity. It's the messiest game in the series since Resident Evil 6, but it's messy in a different way, and it's a mess that I'm concerned how Capcom will handle moving forward. As they look to pump out more remakes, will they follow a similar path here for Resident Evil 10, where they split the difference and try to appease the action and survival horror crowd? Early signs show high sales for an already high-selling series. Will this be the path of the series moving forward? Hard to say at the moment. It is a series that is nearing its 30-year anniversary as of writing. Shows no signs of slowing down. It has its peaks and its valleys, and has been at a commercial peak for some time now. Despite my quarrels with Requiem, I would still take it over most modern big-budget titles these days. At big-budget level, survival horror games are slim pickings these days. You have to go to the indies to get a good fix. But how will the future look for the franchise? Whatever you thought of 7 and Village, they did move the series forward. Requiem feels like a bit of a side shuffle at times while looking back. There's nothing wrong with looking back, but it falls into the cliches and nostalgia baiting that rings so hollow these days, where Raccoon City should have remained a smoldering ruin. If you want to look back, use those remakes that you're no doubt making more of. I have a hard time coming up with a conclusion here, so I will say, I miss Ethan Winters. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you have not done so. Curious to hear below your thoughts on Requiem. What you liked, what you didn't, what you thought of the plot especially. Special shout out to the Boulder Punchers who give extra support to the channel on Patreon or YouTube memberships. For those in the complete global saturation tier, American Boot, Plan Nagel. For those in the thank you for your patronage tier, Tom Terrible. For those in the now this is Boulder Punching tier, Ethan, James Warner, Cray, the Madman in Waco, Nay2, The original Narcissus Diet Thick Dew TM Neo Edition. For those in the Jill Sandwich tier, On Hell, Benji, Benny Winterdawn, BB FM Bloxburg, Darkrod99, Dragon Fang Studios, James Kilgore, Leonard Arnson, Logan Lepin, Mad Morpheus Gaming, Michael B., Nico Pero, Sam Jones, Squid Vicious, Strababina, Vinyl Morpheus, Will Han, and Zin. Now for the post-video Q&A. Those in the Jill Sandwich tier and higher can ask these, starting with Flan Nagel. Nice to see that nothing was learned from Resident Evil 6 and their disastrous approach to the franchise. On the note, do you think Requiem's approach was based on marketing to a broader audience? I do, but as I brought up earlier, but in a different way than, say, Resident Evil 6. Resident Evil 6 was very much that heyday of, we want the Call of Duty audience. That mindset killed many a franchise or put them on ice for some time, like Resident Evil 6 did there, where they struggled to realize the Call of Duty audience likes Call of Duty. Some may venture out, but, to abandon their core established audiences is more or less always a fool's errand. For here it very much comes across as appeasing the survival horror fans and action-heavy fans of the franchise. Brought up looking at those sales numbers for 2 and 7, and the remake of 4 being the fastest-selling game in the franchise to reach 10 million copies. So instead of trying to merge like they did with Village, they went for the split. Get both audiences that way. Just mentioned, seems to look promising so far sales-wise, unless it has a sharp drop-off like Resident Evil 6 did after its release, so we will have to wait and see. So thanks for the question, Flan Nagel. From Cray, I came back and read your thoughts after finishing my first playthrough. The more the game progressed, the more I agreed with your points. Very excited to see what you make of the state of the franchise. Personally felt that the game was like a greatest hits collection, not in a good way however, trying to squeeze too much in. Do you think the plot is leading to the return of the previous villain, perhaps Wesker, giving the series lack of an overarching or long-standing antagonist? I do agree with that statement of greatest hits, which I did not mention in my video, but a very apt term for Requiem. As far as villains go, they got themselves into a weird spot the last few entries. Look at Village, they could have gotten far more mileage out of Mother Miranda and her merry little family. Victor Gideon in Requiem could have gotten far more mileage out of as well. The notes of blood transfer and memories, I thought they were going to go the path of bringing back Spencer through a new vessel like Grace or Emily. Which lead me to think you might get something with Alex Wesker and Natalia. Again, that ending of Revelations 2 seemed to point to that happening. That is something they can always bring back into the equation. I don't foresee Albert Wesker returning. I hope Capcom reads the room with the fans' reception of Xeno. Although I write that statement, that leads to a bit of a possible fear. Capcom thinks, hey, why don't we bring back the real Wesker instead of this cheap imitation? Just please, Capcom, just leave Wesker as he may be. With how much the connections come up in Requiem, will they step out of these shadows moving forward? Who knows? The best course of action they could do with bringing back past villains would be Alex Wesker through Natalia. That's been established. Or they could do like they did with Resident Evil 7, ignore most of the lore at large, strip things back to something simpler, and tie it back near the end. And honestly, that doesn't sound like a bad idea considering what happens here. So thank you for the question, Cray. From James Kilgore, in the game files, the Chunk brothers that you face are known as Thomas and Timothy. Do you think that Tommy and Timmy are so angry because villagers kept selling them random crap in Nook's Cranny, and they just finally snapped? So yes, that is a reference potentially to Animal Crossing. That is a good catch and quite funny. As far as my experience with Animal Crossing goes, not too much. I played the DS version back in the day as a kid. I think only like a couple of hours. So I wonder if this was a deliberate reference from Capcom. Animal Crossing is a bit of a random one. Guess, maybe someone on staff played a lot of it during the early stretch of lockdown. That was kind of all the rage there. So that's a possibility. But that is interesting. Good point out there, James Kilgore. And thank you for the question. How would you feel if Resident Evil started having a Call of Duty approach to their games? One year would be an action third person, while the other year being horror first person. Good question. First, they'd have to scale up the amount of internal staff and any other external studios they have to both games to get that running at a kind of switch back and forth. But if they could reach those targets, that feels like it would be a bit of a road to ruin. Although from what the rumors imply, it'd be a case of having a couple of remakes every year or so, and then a new title. Requiem was supposed to come out sooner than it did, but hit some snags and delays in development. Because as mentioned, Capcom has been pumping out Resident Evil at a faster rate than most large studios come when it comes to franchises these days. That said, they have the remakes to work with, giving them that template, so they do also have that additional speed for it. They do something like a smaller spin-off title every 2 years and alternate. Could see that. Where I would prefer the spin-off titles to be more action-focused. Switching back and forth, short-term might work, but long-term would dilute the series. I believe in the brand, so yeah, that's my thoughts about that there. Thanks for the question, Logan. So thank you again, everyone. It's been a while of recording here. I'm definitely losing my voice. If you'd like to support the channel further, consider joining Patreon or as a YouTube member. You can also do one-time donations through a Super Thanks or Ko-fi. See you again in the next video, which looks to be another release in the large budget horror space, this time again, second remake of Fatal Frame 2.